ever, you were willing to create the false impression that you were going along with his requests to appoint Ngapeshaya and El Shaddai, despite the fact that you had no intention of doing that whatsoever.
Spot on.
So you were misleading him in relation to your texts to him on Ngapeshaya and El Shaddai on your version.
In the same way as I had presumed that he was misleading me, yes.
Sorry, how was he misleading you?
He was constantly sending me reminders that he needs me to check for compliance. I then established on my own that this is more than that.
But it's after that you exchange your messages about being brothers for life.
It's within the context of those discussions. These are not isolated events, Essie. They are interrelated.
Sorry, what's interrelated?
You're speaking about me huffing and puffing.
Yes.
I'm explaining to you how that came about. Firstly, I'm agreeing with you. Yes, I did huff and puff. I did create a false impression that I would check for compliance, as he would constantly request me to. However, due to the persistence, I had indicated that it was clear to me, even though he's not saying it verbatim, that I need to assist in checking for compliance. In my mind, it rang a bell that this looks like it's more than that. I took a decision in my mind that he's also misleading me in some way or not. I'm going to play the same game.
But it wasn't to check for compliance. By the time that you were huffing and puffing, it was quite clear that he was giving you a list of bidders in priority and our list.
Mm-hmm.
So he was no longer misleading you. If he, at the beginning, was asking for compliance, if that's what he was doing, by this stage it was clear that he was asking for something more.
It was clear, Chair, but not verbatim. He did not at one point state that. Throughout our discussions on 148, 152, and 157, right through 177, the discussions were clear. Please check for compliance, please check for compliance. In my mind, it rang a bell that this is more than compliance. He does not say at any point, but I realized that from my own due to the persistence. Hence, on 177, I start misleading him intentionally to stop this matter from proceeding any further.
I just want to correct something that you've just stated. There is no text ever where he asks for compliance.
I mentioned to the Commission that we had a discussion. He phoned me on 148 when he initially sent me that. We had a telephonic discussion. I indicated to the Commission that there are various modes to communicate with one another. The first mode would be via text message. The second mode would be via telephonic discussion. In this instance, he raised that via a WhatsApp telephonic discussion.
The message that he sends you saying, find below our vehicles for land to be given Kumpuwetu in order of priority, is not preceded by any discussion.
Let's see, what page are we on?
We're on page 177.
177 is the last instance of trigger. This is where I start huffing and puffing intentionally as well. So before that, if you go to 148, this is where you see the discussion which takes place. 148, after that, there's a telephonic call that comes on board. He then explains to me why he's sending me those things. I clearly indicate to him that, Sergeant Nkosi, there's nothing I can do for you. I can't check for compliance on 148 after he had sent me that. That's the evidence I had provided yesterday.
Yes, but if we go back to 177, it's your response to the list of vehicles for land in order of priorities, you're on top of it.
Yes.
And it's more. This is our Mfowethu. This is the final list, right? Question mark. And your response, and his response is yes, it's our final list.
Yes.
At that stage, there's no doubt about what he's asking you about.
And this is exactly why I responded in the manner that I responded with the evidence that I provided to the committee, to the Commission. Apologies. This was me huffing and puffing now.
So this is your huffing and puffing, and yes. What you're doing is you're taking someone who you regard as a brother for life, and you are misleading him.
Yes. In the same way he misled me by persistently saying, check for compliance. And I realized that it's more than that.
Why do you not take him up? Is your complaint then that he misled you, that he said he just wanted you to check for compliance, whereas in actual fact he wanted you to rig the tender?
The reason I don't I don't take him on, as previously stated.
I just need to understand what your complaint was. Was your complaint that he misled you by asking to check for compliance when in actual fact he wanted you to rig the tender? Was that your complaint?
There's no complaint.
Is that why you...
There's no complaint. I strategically took a decision to take ownership and manage the situation. There's no complaint from me.
You said you started misleading him only after he had been misleading you.
Spot on.
And the misleading of you was that he asked you to check for compliance when in actual fact he wanted you to rig a tender. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And so despite the fact that he's misled you, you mislead him, you regard each other as brothers for life.
Yes.
Is this how you deal with your brothers?
Yes, that's how I dealt with the situation. And I would deal with it in the same way again.
You see, what we have, if we step back and we look at the overall picture, is you and Sergeant Nkosi have an incredibly close relationship. You describe each other as brothers for life. He clearly cares about you very much, and you clearly care about him very much. You accept all of that.
I've accepted that, SC.
In respect of TMPD 1, he engages you wanting the bid to be awarded to Ngapashe and El Shaddai.
He engaged me asking me for compliance.
No, but at a certain point, he moves from compliance to rigging the tender. That's what you've just said.
He doesn't move, I assume, because of his actions. I'm not saying, I assume that because I picked up from the persistence. There's no way where he verbatim tells me, rig these tenders in favor of this.
Sorry, Mr. Mnisi, a minute ago you said you only started misleading him because he was misleading you. He was misleading you by asking for compliance when he really wanted you to rig the tender.
That's exactly what I stick to say. That's what I say.
Yes. So he was asking you to rig the tender, is what you understood the situation to be.
That's what I assumed on my own, SC. He did not verbatimly ask me anyway.
And he wanted you to rig the tender in favor of Ngapashe and El Shaddai.
From my reading of that, he wanted me to prioritize that, yes.
Yes. And out of the 57 bidders who initially competed in this tender, 2 of the 7 ultimate successful bidders were Ngapashe and El Shaddai.
Through the rigorous procurement process that was undertaken and the probity report from external parties, that's true.
Then we come to TMPD 3. And there we know that Sergeant Nkosi has been asked to get the award cancelled. Which
is something I know nothing about. I don't know the gentleman who sent him that request. There's no certainty that they are speaking to is me. Secondly, he doesn't even forward me that message at all.
And lo and behold, TMPD 3 does get cancelled in terms of a resolution that provides 3 reasons for cancellation, none of which justify cancellation.
As well as the probity report, which is a critical part of the procurement process.
I'm putting to you, Mr. Mnisi, that if one looks at the objective facts, as opposed to what you say happened and what you say documents actually meant, it looks very much like your very close relationship with Sergeant Nkosi tainted both of these tender processes that you presided over.
I respectfully disagree with you. There was no bias or any impairment of my objectivity in terms of handling both tenders. Tender TMPD 1, the process was followed right to the T with a conclusive probity report from an external party validating that. Tender TMPD 03, I further disagree with you respectfully, SC, as a result of the probity report must be read in consideration with the bid adjudication committee resolution. The BAC resolution is not the sole reasons that were mentioned there for cancellation. The probity report is a critical component which must be brought on board when we are making conclusions. So on those reasons, I respectfully disagree with you.
But of course, everything you say about probity is not mentioned in the resolution at all.
In the resolution, we only mentioned additional matters, as I had stated before. The probity report was part and parcel of this. Within the resolution itself, we refer to the probity, which means it has to be read together. You can't read the BAC resolution in isolation of the probity report. Had there been an instance where in the BAC resolution that signed off, we don't refer to probity at all, potentially I would say, hey, I think I'm tempted to agree with you. By virtue of the actual proceedings of BAC, including the probity report is a critical document, and by virtue of the resolutions making reference, I think on 3 occasions, to the probity report, further justifies that the probity report was an essential document which was considered for the cancellation.
Can you just take me to this resolution and show me where the references to the probity report on which you're placing such reliance are?
On page 429 of the pack.
428. Your first reference is 429.
Yes, I'm starting with 429.
Is that of 3, Mr. Mnisi?
Two.
2, I'm sorry.
What's the reference you're relying on, or the references to probity?
Just waiting for the chair to have the same page. Thank you so much, Chair. Firstly, on page 429, paragraph from the item number 4, bullet point number 2, it says the material irregularities identified by probity, which means the probity report.
Sorry, keep reading.
Yes. The probity report, well, Chair, that the material irregularities identified by probity were due to the pricing schedule, which were issued as an addendum. In regard to the interpretation of the addendum, it stipulated that the pricing schedule must be completed in full, no blank spaces.
So, sorry. Are any of the probity complaints that you are placing such reliance on linked in any way to the pricing schedule?
I'm bringing your attention, SC, to the word probity, that the probity report was considered, that this BAC did not take place without reviewing that. By referring on bullet point number 2 to the word probity, there's only one probity report that's there, and that's in reference to the previous GM20 that was just prevented. It's the only feasible resolution that we can refer back to within the sequence of these events. Secondly, if you go down, there's another reference to probity. Bullet point number 3, the BEC interpretations is that the pricing schedule need not have blank spaces according to probity report, which its recommendations have changed. The initial BEC recommendations stated that blank spaces must be completed with numerical figures. This resulted in potential selective evaluation of bidders and the potential unjustified disqualification of bidders. The second line of bullet point number 3 clearly references the probity report, which is GM20.
Yes, and it's referring to the issue of blank spaces versus numerical figures, is it not?
Over and above a probity report.
No, not over and above probity report. It's saying that the probity recommendation states that blank spaces must be completed with numerical figures. That's the point of that reference to probity.
It says according to the probity report, which references GM20. It's the entire report. You don't just look at this without considering that. So by virtue of this second bullet point, well, the third bullet point and the second sentence referring to a full probity report, this probity report, in all fairness, can only be referenced to GM20.
It is GM20. It's obviously GM20, but the point is what you take out of GM20. Out of GM20 is the issue of the blank spaces, not anything else.
And that's what I was trying to explain from when we started this discussion, SC. That if we agree from the beginning to look at the BAC report in isolation of the probity report, we will have issues of this nature in the end. And so now I want to bring it back on point again, that the BAC report that considered this cancellation was read in conjunction with the probity report, and it was referred to GM20, the entire probity report. The additional elements that are raised here is as the result of BAC picking up additional matters that must be emphasized upon. But the probity report in its entirety is the baseline document which leads to cancellation.
Sorry, let's look at the only reference to the probity report in the actual resolution. It's not an additional issue. It's an issue raised in the probity report, the issue of blank spaces versus not blank spaces. You know, numerical insertions versus deletions. That's mentioned in the probity report. During the meeting between the BEC and probity teams on 26 August, it became apparent that there were multiple interpretations of the specifications. That's an issue that comes out of probity. It's not an additional issue.
I was explaining the context and what happens at BAC, this specific BAC that's set on this specific day. I was explaining that maybe there needs to be, in fact, not maybe, there needs to be an improvement in how discussions are captured. But when we are capturing resolutions, it's a summary of the discussion that took place. Within those discussions, there's an entire pack that's attached before it is sent through to the city manager for approval. So not only was this considered in isolation, the entire pack, which included the probity report, was received and assessed and analyzed by the accounting officer from the BAC, who further concurred with these reasons. He interacted with the entire pack, would never have signed this if the city manager was not of the view that he's happy with the reasons provided by the BAC. It's within his rights to refer this thing back. The city manager by profession is an attorney as well, so he would have seen issues of this nature, and he would have probably been aware more than I would have been as a finance individual of any law-related matters that I couldn't have foresaw at that point in time. So when he considered this cancellation report, it was not in isolation with the probity report. He assessed the contents of those findings as per the probity report. He then agreed that the reasons within the BAC report, coupled with the probity report, are sufficient. We don't want to incur irregular expenditure as a city.
I'm going to move to a different topic now. I can take a very short topic so that we can still get it in before the lunch break. Can I take you to page 230?
Of the
Bundle 3, File 3.
page 230. Yes.
And there you'll see that from page 230 to page 275, there are 45 pages of pictures of two SUVs.
Yes.
Can you explain what these pictures are about?
Well, these are pictures of cars. He was asking me for advice in terms of which is a nice car.
So he sent you a nice car for what?
Well, I presume he was contemplating on purchasing it, but I don't know. He sent me a picture for cars to give him my comment and my views in terms of which car do I think is nice.
So you understood him to be advising you to be asking your advice on which car he should buy.
On which car is nice.
Did you not discuss this at all? I mean, there are calls beforehand, and it's quite strange to send 45 pages of pictures without a discussion.
I think we discussed it afterwards, because afterwards in 275, you can see their responses, and then we discussed this matter afterwards in terms of, I think this one is nice because of these reasons, not beforehand.
Yes, but before you even have a call on page 275, you're saying this is the one. What was the one for?
That's the nice one. That's one I like.
Yes, that's the one you like.
Yeah.
But what did you understand him to be asking you in relation
Asking me to check which vehicle is nice.
And that presumably came before the exchange in relation to this car?
Well, I say this one, referring to the one above, meaning I like this one. He then obviously either doesn't understand me, then he calls me on the next message. I clarify that for him, SC.
Yes, but my question is, presumably before he sent all of these pictures of cars to you, he must have given you some context for it.
No, there was no context given.
So, all right. The pictures of the car in the bundle come immediately before a PIN that he sends you.
What page is that?
So if your exchange ends on page 275, and then on page 276, the following day he sends you a pin, which is at page, well, at 328 on message time, 528 on the 30th of April.
Page 276, yes, I see that.
What was that pin for?
This must be related to page 277 as well. If you look at page 277, there's a screenshot.
Yes.
On page 277, this is where he was going. I presumably think that was the pen.
Where was he going?
He was there we go. He was going to see Mr. Joe Sibagnoni.
And why was he sending you a message saying, I'm going to see Mr. Joe Sibagnoni?
We probably had to meet, so he was unable to meet me, if I recall correctly. That's the only reason. There's no other reason he would send me that. So in fact, he was telling me we can't meet up anymore. I've got a meeting at this place.
If you go down,
Yes.
you'll see that your message is, okay, my brother, let me know how it goes.
Yes.
Why were you interested in his meeting with Mr. Sibagnoni?
I was not interested per se. I mean, you just canceled our engagement that we should have went to. So just let me know how it goes. So we can go for our meeting. Let me know when you're done so that we can resume the activities that we needed to do.
Had he previously mentioned Mr. Sibagnoni to you?
We'll have to check, Chair. I think previously he had sent me a TikTok video of some sort of Mr. Sibagnoni, so he might have mentioned it. I can't say for certain yes or no, but I think he might have.
I think the TikTok video you are referring to is at page 42.
Oh, yes, then he has.
And what was that about?
He was just sending me a TikTok video that was trending.
A trending message about the launch of the Joe Sibagnoni Foundation.
It's spot on.
And why did he think you would be interested in the launch of the Joe Sibagnoni Foundation?
In the same way, I would send him articles. It was just sharing information, I guess. I was not interested in the Joe Sibagnoni Foundation. Got no interest in matters of that nature. Never met Mr. Joe Sibagnoni. He was just sending me this in a similar way. I would send him articles.
Can I take you to the footer, page 86?
Page 86.
There on the 16th of December, you say, at the foot of the page, I'm okay, my bro, I always wake up early, it's in my blood now, I'm taking it easy today, how's the madam feeling? He responds, she's great, thanks. I got a call at 6:30 to come see number one. You say, who, my bro? Number one. And then you say, JS, question mark. Who were you asking in relation to JS?
I was referring to Mr. Joe Sibagnoni.
And why did you think that Sergeant Nkosi, when he refers to seeing number one, would be referring to Mr. Sibagnoni?
He's the president of one of the taxi associations. He's number one within the taxi fraternity as far as I was concerned.
He's number one in the taxi fraternity?
As far as I'm concerned,
As
yes.
far as you're concerned, yes. And you must have known then that Sergeant Nkosi had a relationship with him.
We had a discussion. He had sent me this. He told me he knew him. Whether it's a personal, business relationship, I did not know. And honestly, I was not interested as well. I knew they knew each other. I knew they met occasionally as well. But I was not interested in their discussions. It's none of my business.
You see, earlier when I asked you if you'd ever had discussions with Sergeant Nkosi about Mr. Sibagnoni, you couldn't remember. You vaguely remembered a TikTok in relation to...
Very, very interesting, I must say, the admissions, the lack of admission in certain instances, and of course, sometimes a bit of agitation and frustration playing out there at the Madlanga Commission. But that's all we have time for this afternoon, and please feel free to go on to some of the other SABC News properties if you'd like to follow these proceedings uninterrupted. But from the team and I here at Updated Noon, that's it for today. It's 1 o'clock. Here's on Delambana with your latest news.
Thank you, Sakina. And the team on the top stories. IEC allocated 3.1 billion rand budget and 6 die after allegedly consuming contaminated food. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The Chief Financial Officer of the Electoral Commission, Don Mbata, says they have been allocated a 3.1 billion rand budget for the 2026-27 financial year. The Commission's delegation is briefing Parliament's Committee on Home Affairs on this year's performance plan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I'll take us through the performance plan. We are looking at a budget allocation of 3.1 billion for the year 26-27. We do have 15 strategic targets. Again, in addition to that, we are looking to have 2 registration weekends and then the much anticipated 26-27 RGE.
6 people have died after an alleged food contamination incident at Motongwabogobe village outside Polokwane in Limpopo. The deceased include a 7-year-old girl. More than 40 people have been taken to hospital. Those affected ate food allegedly laced with poison during a funeral service over the weekend. Madlanga Commission has heard that Sergeant Fani Nkosi was in possession of a confidential draft report linked to the multi-million rand security tender. Suspended Tshwane CFO Gareth Mnisi has previously testified that documents related to tenders at the city of Tshwane were kept under lock and key. Mnisi's relationship with Nkosi is under scrutiny at the Commission. Commissioner Sesi Baloyi has put it to Mnisi that Nkosi's access to the confidential documents raises concerns about possible corruption in the tender process.
I'm reformulating. Sergeant Nkosi had access to a tender-related document that should not have been in his possession. You accept that?
I have accepted that.
And that suggests, or at least on the face of it, is a corruption already of the tender process. It is being muddied. Do you accept that? That
No.
a tender document that is internal of an incomplete tender assessment process is sitting with a member of the public, because that's what he is.
Transport Minister Barbara Chrissy says while SAA has declared a profit for the 2024-25 financial year, it will be a long way before it is financially stable. She's appearing before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Transport and has expressed government's displeasure with the state of SAA's financial affairs. The Office of the Auditor General is briefing the committee on the audit outcomes of the entity's 2024-25 financial year. The airline was placed under business rescue in 2019 for about 3 years, which led to consecutive years of no audits being performed. Chrissy explains.
There was a moderate profit that was declared, but that profit primarily emerges from the sale of the Heathrow slot. And while there was some improvement in passenger numbers and in passenger revenue, I think that we're still a long way from being a profitable entity.
A senior Iranian military officer says the armed forces are ready to deliver an immediate response to any renewed hostilities by the U.S. and Israel. The commander, Ali Abdullahi, was speaking at a two-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran is due to expire tomorrow. The BBC's Lise Doucette has the details.
Iran continues to send mixed messages about the possibility of talks. In his social media posts, President Masoud Pezeshkian has written about the need to manage issues in a calm environment. But he's also warned that America seeks Iran's surrender and Iran won't submit to force. Officials here say privately they want to pursue negotiations. But President Trump's stream of military threats and astonishing declarations of a deal within days also deepened distrust. Mr. Pezeshkian also posted that for reason to prevail in the talks, Iran wants more proof Mr. Trump would stand by any deal.
Recapping the top story, the Chief Financial Officer of the Electoral Commission, Don Mbata, says they have been allocated a 3.1 billion rand budget for the 2026-27 financial year. I'm on Lambana for SAFM News Headlines at 1:30.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Wondering why 45-year-old Nuvan has such a big smile lately?
Outsurance. Saved me so much money. 461 rand.
That's right. With Outsurance, Nuvan saves an amazing 461 Rand a month on his 2025 VWT Cross. And after 3 claim-free years, he gets an out bonus.
So much money.
How much money could Outsurance save you? Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
Makoti Down Products is a proudly South African family business, started more than 30 years ago with 12 geese and a piece of material. Makoti manufactures duvets, pillows, sleeping bags, and high-quality Egyptian cotton linen. Our down products are suitable for people with dust mite allergies and come with a lifelong guarantee. And we offer a nationwide cleaning service for all your feather and down products. Visit us at makoti.co.za or call us on 041 992 395. For quality down, Makoti Down.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
And that is how we begin the show in a little bit of an Afro samba kind of mood with Senegalese singer and guitarist Baba Mal coming through in this particular one. African Woman. I don't know about you, but it kind of had me moving my hips just a little bit, setting the tone for some good vibrations this afternoon. I know it's quite difficult to cling on to some kind of positivity and some kind of joy in the midst of everything that is occupying our headlines as a country. But wherever we can get it, wherever we can find it, you got to harness it and make it work for you. We've got a jam-packed show today. We are going to be catching up with Usibahle Mota, and as I speak to you right now, visuals coming out of SABC News 404 of course, General Fani Masimula, who was appearing at the High Court this morning, in that case postponed to the 13th of May. A lot of parallel processes happening alongside the Madlanga Commission, and we'll find out exactly how this speaks to what's been transpiring at the Madlanga. We'll also be in conversation for stages, pages, screens, and more with Kensiwe Shabalala, who's an actress, and we're looking at storytelling as a tool for healing, and in particular, borrowing some experiences and some unresolved moments from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Another important conversation that is coming up on the show, and this is one of those revolving themes that we have on the Full Circle, is a call on fathers to help eliminate violence. We'll be in conversation with Heartlines around this one, as to how do we begin to invite dads and uncles and male figures into this conversation around GBV, violence and brutality, and the role that the masculine presence plays in all of its different facets in that. So we'll be having that. I'll let you know what's coming up on the other side of 2 o'clock, closer to that time. It is a Tuesday, which means that after 2 we take a health and wellness skew, but I'll unpack those details for you on the other side of 1. It's gone 10 past 1 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and our lines are open on 061 410 4107. That is our WhatsApp line. If you want to send through a WhatsApp voice note, you're more than welcome to do so. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call in on, and perhaps you can share your perspective around the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A lot of people saying that it really was a job half done, that it really didn't hold space for victims and by extensions their families and affected communities. A lot of people also questioning just the purpose and as well as what happens after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Where do victims find comfort? Where do they find solace? Where do they find where do they find just safety for their emotions? So all of that is part and parcel of our conversation today, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. A quick pause and then we come right back.
Bridget Masinga is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, let's get into a conversation with Usibahle Mota as we catch up on the Madlanga Commission and everything that's happened there this morning. Of course, we know that the suspended Chief Financial Officer, Gareth Mnisi, is back on the stand for day 94 of the Madlanga Commission as his cross-examination continues. Usibahle, how are you doing today?
Good afternoon to you, Bridget, and thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for the time. Much appreciated. Maybe before we even get into today, just so we can understand where we pick up from today, we probably should rewind back to where we ended off yesterday.
Yes, definitely. So yesterday what the Madlanga Commission had actually done was scrutinize text messages between Sergeant Fani Ngozi as well as Gareth Mnisi. And as you know, the allegations are that Mnisi actually, was involved in this multi-million rand security tender in alleged rigging. And this involved, obviously, Sergeant Fani Ngozi as well as Omashi Dlamini, who's the suspended deputy police chief at the city of Tshwane. And this was how, some of these text messages between them were scrutinized and how they used Sergeant Fani Ngozi to communicate pertaining to issues of the city of Tshwane. And again, it was raised that Fani Ngozi was a person who was not employed by the City of Tshwane, but actually had access to very confidential information at the City of Tshwane. And this is sort of where we pick up again from today, where the relationship between Mnisi as well as Sergeant Fanny Nkosi it has further been scrutinized, and we are even finding that the evidence leader, Advocate Matthew Shackleton, put it to Mnisi that, his relationship with Fanny Nkosi actually extended beyond this, very close friendship, but also in other aspects of his life.
And I mean, it's sort of observed, I guess, over the last couple of days that Mnisi has been on the stand, that he's been very slick with his wording in terms of just how he's navigating the commissioners. A lot of people saying that you can see also that clearly his legal representation have done a good job at prepping him for a particular line of questioning, because he almost evades direct responses to very direct questions by playing a word puzzle of sorts.
No, definitely. And if you remember, even with his responses to Advocate Matthew Shackleton or to any of their commissioners, what is meant to be a yes or no answer, he then tries to substantiate. And we even saw, the chairperson, Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga, putting it to him, saying that you don't have to explain everything, because remember, we are under a time crunch, and this is just wasting time, which obviously, his legal representative also took quite some, offense to what Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga was saying that he should afford her clients the opportunity to sort of answer questions. But I must say that he's very, very, very sharp with his answers. And I mean, also we are dealing with very technical issues that goes into the tenders, and the bidding process. And he seems to be somehow thorough. But I mean, we are finding instances where the evidence leader, Advocate Matthew Shackleton, is sort of poking holes into some of his testimony, and even showing that, his relationship with Sergeant Fanny Nkosi, who's believed to have had very confidential information that no other person should have, that relationship actually extended far beyond this sort of brothership or brotherhood, rather, that he claims that they had, but it extended to a point where even Advocate Matthew Shackleton was saying that he believes Sergeant Nkosi was providing security for the suspended CFO.
Back in 2025, April last year, Nkosi's brother's company, Ngapesheya, they bid for that security tender at the municipality, which has been front and center for a lot of this exchange. And we saw Commissioner Mbuyiseli Madlanga questioning Mnisi whether or not this posed a conflict of interest in his other role as chairperson of the city's bid adjudication committee, the BAC. Now, Mnisi disagreed with this. He said that he doesn't think so, because he had no business interest in Nkosi's brother's company.
And I mean, also, the evidence, the fact that he's close, he's very close to somebody that he considers as a brother, and he was helping Sergeant Nkosi's brother Begi with a tender bid for his company, Ngapesheya, actually states otherwise. I mean, I think this was actually evidence that we even saw with previous witnesses, that their proximity to these high-ranking officials in the city of Tshwane somehow affords them the opportunity to get help from them, where else, an ordinary South African citizen or Tshwane citizen wouldn't have the same access and the same opportunity. And he seemed to be, very relaxed and trying to evade question, and even Justice Mbuyiseli Madlanga putting it to him that his understanding of conflict of interest is very narrow, because by the virtue of his proximity and by the virtue that he had even asked Sergeant Nkosi to tell his brother to make amendments to certain documents, shows that there was a conflict of interest, and he used his position as the CFO to actually help Sergeant Nkosi's brother in this tender bid.
Just last question to you, Sibahle. I know that you've been in the room at the Madlanga, but because it does speak directly to what's happening at the Madlanga, what do we know so far about the appearance of General, why now am I forgetting, General Fanny Masimula at the High Court?
No, so from what I've seen is that he's going to be tried with the other co-accused in this, sex tender that includes Vutsumuzi, Ket Matlala. And I think what is important to draw from this is the fact that when, evidence was presented to him about this controversial sex tender, it seemingly looks as though he did nothing, and it took a newly appointed police minister, which was Senzo Mchunu, to, bring this controversial tender and say that they must cancel it because it had so many irregularities. So I think his part in being passive in the matter is definitely going to be questioned. And I mean, even General Shadrack Sibiya had repeatedly said that General Fani Masemola did nothing when issues of this irregular tender was actually raised with him. So it seems like the National Police Commissioner will definitely be tried with the other co-accused, and I think we can also expect some form of communication from the president regarding his position and whether he'll be suspended or not.
It's an unfortunate turn of events, but perhaps the necessary ones. Usbahle Mota, thank you so much for the time. That was SABC News reporter Usbahle Mota coming to us from the Madlanga Commission, rounding up day 94 out in Pretoria. It's just gone 20 past 1 o'clock. A quick pause and then we come back on the other side.
No one gets fit overnight. It takes discipline, and your money is no different. A Nedbank 32-day notice account helps you build financial strength with up to 7.3% interest and zero maintenance fees. The higher the deposit, the higher the return. Invest in under 2 minutes on the Money app and get money fit with Nedbank. For more information, go to nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank, we're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
As we celebrate 90 years of existence, SAFM takes you back to the voices that shaped a nation.
Now leave the SABC and see the tower block lit up, 27 stories of light. Move from Auckland Park into the shadow of the Hillbrow Post Office Tower.
This is the English service of the SABC. Here is the news, read by Patricia Carr. A member of the Planning Committee of the President's Council, Mr. Nick Turnich, has been appointed chairman of the Council's Community Relations Community.
90 years of trusted voices. This is SAFM.
Top Billing is back and it's more spectacular than ever. Join us as we reopen the doors to South Africa's most iconic lifestyle show. From breathtaking homes and world-class travel to the people shaping culture and success, this is where it all comes together. Mark your calendar. The all-new season of Top Billing premieres on S3 Thursday, the 30th of April at 7 p.m. You can also stream it live on SABC Plus, available on all app stores. Top Billing is back on S3. Open up.
Stages, pages, screens, and more on the Full Circle.
All right, we're in conversation now with Kensiwe Shabalala, who is an actress, and we're looking at storytelling as a tool for healing. And in particular, we're looking at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on stage. 2026 marks 30 years since the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the Market Theatre, in partnership with Zhenga Multimedia in Kosovo, presented Under the Shade of a Tree one Saturday and Wept, a piercing play about the TRC as well as Kosovo's movement for the reconciliation of blood feuds. Before we go any further, perhaps just a little clip that sets the tone.
A mother has waited for this day to tell the world of the policeman who had tortured her son before he finally disappeared. This morning, Elizabeth Mtamkulu is going to the Truth Commission. She and her husband, Sipho, are armed with a set of diaries Siphiwe Mtamkulu wrote in detention. It tells the story of a gang of Eastern Cape security policemen who savaged and brutalized a young man.
Although he is dead, he can still talk. He is talking now.
Siphiwe Maxwell Mtamkulu, leader of the Congress of South African Students.
He told me that even if they can kill me, as long as they will be killing me for truth.
Mtamkulu was leading a resurgence of student militancy in the Eastern Cape. On the 31st of May 1981, He was arrested during anti-Republic Day demonstrations in Port Elizabeth. Mthimkhulu was in perfect health when he was incarcerated. When he emerged from detention 5 months later, he was a shadow of his former self.
I remember his words once telling his father that they have finished me this time, Father, because now even my memory is not like before. I don't think that I will be that pure of yours again.
2 days after his release, he was unable to walk. His hair fell out. Medical tests showed he had been poisoned with thallium.
I even kept his hair that fell off from his head in Cape Town.
Mthimkhulu spent months in hospital recovering. In April 1982, he sued the Minister of Police for torturing and poisoning him. 2 weeks later, Siphiwo Mthimkhulu and a friend, Topsy Mandaka, disappeared. They were never seen again. But he left something behind, a set of diaries.
The very day of release, after being released, he wrote the diary. I still had on only my underpants. Nevold left the office with the towel. He returned. The towel was wet and dripping with water. He tied it over my nose and mouth. As I inhaled water, entered my nasal passage. Breathing was difficult. I lost consciousness and fell. The towel was removed. This was done until I lost consciousness several times. Each time I fell on my back. At times he will sit on my back and hit me. Others will laugh and kick me and then walk away.
The Eastern Cape's most notorious former security policeman, Lieutenant Colonel Gideon Nieuwoud. According to Siphiwo, one of the men who tortured him.
Right, and that is just an excerpt from one of the many stories that were shared at the South African Truth and Reconciliation in 2026 marks 30 years since that process. And this particular clip tells the story of Siphiwo Mthimkhulu, whose story was recounted by his family's testimony at the TRC. And the production that we talk about today highlights some of these stories that have come out of the TRC. Just before we go into the headline news, Kensiwe, perhaps if you give us some context. Good afternoon to you, and how are you?
Good afternoon, Bridget, and thank you so much for having me. I am well and really grateful to be here today.
We appreciate the time. I mean, Siphiwo's story is one of many that were shared at the TRC. Give us some background around this production and the need to highlight some of these harrowing experiences.
My goodness, I just listened to that testimony, which was among over 2,000 testimonies that were shared, and my heart breaks today. As a South African, I just think about how much we have been through, and how much we have overcome to be at this place that we're at today. It's not perfect, but I truly am proud to be a South African. Under the Shade of a Tree, I Sat and Wept is a collaboration between the prolific South African theatre, the Market Theatre, which we all know, as it has provided us with great works of protest theatre reflecting our fight politically as South Africans fighting for equality for everyone. And Shenra Multimedia, which is a production company and a contemporary theatre company in Kosovo. And what this is, Under the Shade of a Tree, I Sat and Wept, is a collaboration between the two countries where we get to recognize and juxtapose the two histories. We in South Africa know of our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it is our 30-year anniversary of that season in time as our country transitioned from one regime to the next. But what audiences have found also really interesting is learning about Kosovo's history. And so in Under the Shade of a Tree, I Sat and Wept, the three Kosovarian actors bring the history of the Kosovo Blood Feuds Reconciliation Campaign, where people were not divided by race as we were in South Africa, but in fact people were divided within their own communities, whereby from previous civil wars, one family member had killed another family member. And so with their principal system called the Kanun, there was this belief that a family member had to take revenge and for the blood that was taken by somebody, their neighbor. And so someone just needed to be taller than a rifle to qualify to go and take revenge for the blood that was lost.
Yeah.
And so they would...
I want us, apologies for coming in your mouth mid-thought, Kensiwe. I just want us to pause there for a second for the headline news, and then we'll come back on the other side and continue exploring this collaboration between SA and Kosovo. It's gone 1:30 on The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the SAPS says the suspended Mpumalanga Police Commissioner Daphne Manamela should have approached the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry or Parliament's ad hoc committee. The Chief Financial Officer of the Electoral Commission, Don Mbata, says they have been allocated a 3.1 billion rand budget for the 2026-27 financial year. And business confidence in South Africa declined in March, slipping by the 3.3 index points to 131.3. A flood rate follows at the top of the hour.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
We're in conversation with Kensiwe Shabalala, who is an actress and telling the stories of the Truth and Reconciliation that took place 30 years ago. And just as we were going into that break, Kensiwe, you were juxtaposing the experiences as relayed in the Truth and Reconciliation by South Africans, and of course as also experienced by Kosovarians during their process of reconciliation.
And I will try to get to the point as quickly as possible. The belief was that for people to have honor, they had to take revenge, and so because people couldn't really leave their homes, they feared that they would be killed, because this was just the culture. And then on the 1st of May 1990, a million people came together and decided to forgive the blood. And people shook hands and said, we will no longer take revenge, and we will do this in the name of the country and in the name of the youth. And so this piece, Under the Shade of a Tree, I Sat and Wept, gets to look at reconciliation in two different parts of the world, and really, instead of dividing people by race, makes us look at us all as victims and perpetrators. And our audiences here in South Africa have enjoyed not only seeing how the work documents and honors these true testimonies of the South African experience with exceptional videography. We've got recordings such like the one that you shared, and also the Gugulethu 7 with Tapelo Mbelo's trial, and many others where we get to see history up on the screen. And then on stage, the 6 actors, I am one of them, Kensiwe, then there's Hunte, Les Made, and Bongile, we're the South Africans, and then we had 3 Kosovarians, Ilira, Arben, and Amernis. We begin to represent each other and reflect each other's story, and also provide levity to the audience so that they can take a breath, breathe in, and find an opportunity to rest and find some joy before jumping back into the testimonies of both South Africa and Kosovo. Specifically, I found it so, it's always heart-wrenching to hear the truth of our history and what we went through with the tortures and so much more suffering than even was shared at the TRC. It breaks my heart, but I am so grateful that I get to represent the pain of our people so that our audience doesn't have to live through that. But audience members have felt that they walked away challenged, because we're not providing solutions and saying you have to forgive, but we are investigating what does reconciliation mean and why do we choose to forgive, and do we do so for the sake of for the youth, for the future of the country, and then how do we find peace when we feel that we have yet to see any remorse or change in behavior, etc.
And to that point, perhaps to ask the role of storytelling as a form of healing, facilitating a healing of the collective and helping us face our past and present.
I think the blessing of being in the sacred space that is live theatre, where we come together in a dark room and put our phones away and pay full attention to the human beings in front of us, I think is already a very healing experience, because we all get to be present together. And then with us being brave enough to look at the past and being open to the past, I think brings the audience to the tree. We all sit under that tree and weep together, but weep for each other's stories. And I think that instead of seeing anybody as a victim, we get to see how so many people who were victimized by the terror of the apartheid regime chose to not be overcome and dehumanize themselves, but chose to find a way to forgive for the sake of the future. And I think that our audience members feel healed because of the opportunity to grieve, and we don't always give ourselves the time to, because life is moving so quickly. So I think in this we take a moment to just at least honor the lives that were not honored in any other way after the TRC, you know?
Yeah.
And with that healing, we also get to come together and laugh together as well. Within the story. And so with the highs and the lows, it is, I'm prayerful that we're touring the world. We'll be going to Norway in June, Italy in July, Portugal in October. I'm praying that we will be returning to the Market Theatre next year, and hopefully more of the youth and more South Africans can come and enjoy the story that is not as traumatizing as one would expect when seeing a work in this period.
Absolutely. Kensiwe, we appreciate the time. That was Kensiwe Shabalala, and she's one of the actresses that take to the stage for Under the Shade of a Tree, I Sat and Wept, in collaboration with Genre Multimedia, which is a Kosovarian company that has joined them on this journey. And it's being staged at the Market Theatre, so you can definitely have a look at the Market box office for ticketing information. A quick pause. We come back and we have a call on fathers to help eliminate violence.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
All right, it is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, and the conversation continues as we look at another important social conversation in the country. In 2022, the murder rate in South Africa was 45.53 per 100,000 people, the fourth highest in the world according to UN ODC reports. The Eastern Cape, Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal provinces have the highest murder rates in the country. And we thought we would be in conversation with CEO at Heartlines, Garth Jaffet, and Utemba Dlamini, author and father. And Temba is going to share a personal story that ties in to this call on fathers, and he authored the book of Village Boy, a memoir of a fatherlessness pastor and father of four. And we'll find out more about that in just a moment. But first, maybe to say good afternoon to you, Garth. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Bridget. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for the time. Maybe if you can take us through the work of Heartlines, and the objective behind the Fathers Matter campaign.
So thanks, Bridget. We've been around for around 20 years. People might remember us from 8 Weeks, 8 Values films, Hopeful, Nothing for Mahala, Beyond the River, etc. But for the last 5 years, we've been developing the Fathers Matter campaign, which is the largest initiative of its kind in Africa to promote the positive presence of men in the lives of children. And there's a clear link to preventing violence of all forms in our country.
And then I also wanted to find out, in terms of the research findings, perhaps on how boys learn to deal with anger, as well as conflict and identity. I wanted to talk around the role that fathers and male figures play, in particular, when it comes to that process of anger, conflict, identity.
So, Bridget, yes, the link is very clear, is that when positive men are present in young boys' and girls' lives, they are much more likely to not end up as perpetrators of violence. Over 90% of young men in our jails and internationally come from so-called father-absent families. And so there's a very protective influence of positive male role models in children's lives, not necessarily a biological father, but the evidence is incredibly clear that when positive men are present in the lives of children, they are far less likely to end up as perpetrators of violence, including GBV, and far less likely as girls to become victims of violence, including GBV.
Yeah. As we have this conversation, I'm reflecting back on a conversation I recently had with author and friend Dr. Mzamo Mashito, who wrote an incredible book probing just where the South African boy child is and the gaps that society has left behind. And he highly advocates for the role of social fathers stepping in based on his own experience, based on experiences with the boys' networks that he works with. To your point that it doesn't necessarily have to be a biological father, but that positivity, that dignity, that sternness, that example of what it is to be a positive, grounded, respectable man can come from someone else. And I think, Themba, let's jump you in here, because that speaks to a personal experience that you had, a near-fatal hijacking, that left you asking the questions around the presence of a male figure in your perpetrator's life. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bridget, and good afternoon to your listeners. And yes, that's correct. It was about in 2015 where I was shot 2 bullets and I almost lost my life. And I think one of the biggest things that stuck out for me is how young the perpetrators were. And it naturally landed me in asking the question, where were the fathers? And it took me to an incident in my childhood. Remember riding a bicycle with a friend of mine down a steep hill. And no one had taught us how to ride. We didn't have brakes on it. At first, it felt like fun, excitement, wind, and just exhilaration as we rode down the hill. But suddenly I realized, actually, I don't know how to really control this thing. And secondly, there is no brakes. And in that moment, a red bucky crawled across the road in front of us, and I panicked. I lost control and I swerved, and fortunately I hit a donga, just missing the barbed wire in the car by a whisker. And I think that sums up the story of a lot of our boys in South Africa, is that, a lot of our boys, as a society, especially when it comes to issues of GBV, we are very good at looking at the crash. The crash has spectator value. And we look at it. We look and we raise alarm and we respond, and which we should, to GBV. But we forget, and neglect the part of asking, how were these boys raised? The issue is that it's not that, masculinity is a problem. The same way speed in a bicycle is not a problem. The problem is control and the ability to brake. And I think a lot of our boys are speeding downhill, coming to full maturation with strength, but they don't know how to stop. They don't know how to handle the emotions. They don't know how to handle pressure. They don't know how to handle power. And I think as a society, we are not doing enough hard work at digging deeper. And I guess, the big takeaway for me, just echoing to what Garth has said, is that the big problem is that fatherlessness is a bit too high.
How do we begin to turn around the sort of culture that's been normalized of, absent fathers or fathers who prioritize other things outside of being there, outside of being present, because providing, and no one is taking away from that, being able to provide a roof and food and a uniform and schooling is a great attribute, but presence more than anything maketh the man.
Certainly. I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I think that I believe we have to reckon with our history. I loved your show earlier, just, dealing with some of the issues that we need to tidy up from our past. But I think our past has a lot to do with normalizing dysfunction. I was doing a research for a book that I'm busy writing and looking at things like poll tax of the 1900s, the land dispossession issue, which forced people, you have tax that is required, the land cannot supply for you anymore. And then migrant labor comes in. And in many ways, just summarizing a big South African issue, is that absence became legislated. And absence was seen as akin to being a man. A man who was home, who was not working. The reason you're home, you're not at the mines. You're not far away from home. And so that level of, that view of fatherlessness became entrenched in how we see ourselves as being proper men. And that's how we defined masculinity. And we forgot that before it was a communal society where the land fed you and everybody was around. And so you had fathers present. And now we think of being an ATM father, just being a person, a dispenser of cash, as that being what a father is, not realizing all the psychological, social ramifications of that. But I do think the first start is by us raising more awareness that being a good father is more important than actually provision. I think God maybe will keep me honest here. There's a study that Hotlines has just concluded in the Hotlines Children's Research Report, which actually finds that children actually prefer presence more than your provision, more than the toys and the chocolates that you give them. And I think that information is not pervasive enough for most fathers in our country.
Yeah, Garth, let's jump you back in here in our final moments. You certainly can speak to that study and also perhaps just illuminate what is missing by way of this conversation around GBV. Because again, I bring up Dr. Mzamo Mashito, who's doing parallel work to what you're doing. And he points out in his most recent book, This Country Hates Our Men, that we are innately a very violent country, and violence is perpetuated throughout. And we need to begin to have this conversation holistically around what violence looks like in the social picture of South Africa.
Yeah, first of all, look, I think Tembo's outlined it particularly well, and we work with Dr. Masito and love his work as well. I think the historically we're the highest level of father absence in the world, and that is based on our past. But I think the potentially exciting thing in terms of turning this around is that men and women, and I emphasize women as well, don't know in South Africa how important it is for men's presence, not their money, but their presence. And that's always, the place to start. You've got to start with knowledge. And so I think there is an opportunity there around just raising this debate and because women also understand men as providers. It's not just men who see ourselves as providers. And if you can't provide, you can't be present. That came out of our studies very clearly. And so in terms of, this is not something that we're going to turn around in the next few years. It's about preventing the car crash, not dealing with the output of that. And that requires us to help men and women across cultural lines in South Africa to get more present in the lives of children. And working with Temba and Dr. Masito and others, we provided great tools On the Fathers Matter website, you can get the Fathers Matter Coach, which is a free WhatsApp thing that helps men and women understand how to be more present in the lives of kids. So is this a quick fix to violence? And I think Dr. Masito is very clear. We have a violence problem in South Africa. We don't just have a GBV problem. And we've got to look at it as that. It's clear that we've got to focus as well on GBV, but actually men are the perpetrators and the biggest victims of violence in our country. So it starts with, let's get a conversation going that fatherhood is more than provision. And if we can start there, we will make a big difference.
Absolutely. Garth Jaffet, CEO at Heartlines, and Themba Dlamini, author and father. That book, Village Boy, a memoir of fatherlessness, is out. We appreciate your time today. And you can be in contact, of course, with Heartlines via heartlines.org.za. If you are in a similar focus field, you can definitely be in touch and perhaps see how you begin to tie into each other's efforts from your small corner of the country as well. This conversation requires all of us to be plugged in from a variety of different angles if we are to make any kind of difference at all in impacting the lives of future generations of South Africa. Those were my guests for this one. It's 10 to 2 o'clock. A quick pause, and then we come back on the other side. We shift focus to a different kind of conversation where we're looking at gaming and how it has the potential to increase economic activity. But there's still some data that is missing.
Moro, Moni, Dumela, Bonjour, Habari. You arrived in South Africa to build something better. New place, new challenges, new responsibilities. Now you can with the Mama Money bank account. Sign up easily using any passport or asylum document. Get paid into your own account. Up to 100,000 a month. You can send money home from wherever you are because this is more than money. It's progress. Buy your Mama Money card today at Pick n Pay or a Mama Money agent. Mama Money, now you can.
Wherever you are in the world, SAFM 104 to 107 is accessible. We're also streaming live on Facebook, X, and YouTube at SAFM Radio. We acknowledge and appreciate everyone tuning in and watching our streams. Stay with SAFM 104 to 107 as we bring you Commission Live, breaking stories, and thought-provoking lectures. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Top billing is back, and it's more spectacular than ever. Join us as we reopen the doors to South Africa's most iconic homes and lifestyle show. From breathtaking homes and world-class travel to the people shaping culture and success, this is where it all comes together. So mark your calendar. The all-new season of Top Billing premieres on S3 Thursday, the 30th of April at 7 p.m. You can also stream it live on SABC Plus, available on all app stores. Top Billing is back on S3. Open up.
Call SAFM now on 086 000 2032.
All right, it is time for us now to catch up with Uxolile Vundla, chairperson of Pixel Creators, and we look at gaming, which has seen growing advancement from a hobby to a profitable industry with a rise in competitive tournaments in South Africa. But its true potential apparently is not being reached as a result of a lack of sufficient data. So we wanted to catch up with the chairperson of Pixel Creators to speak more on this for us and help us understand what could be some of the challenges and perhaps even the opportunities that lay to be exploited. How are you doing this afternoon, Olile?
I'm fine, thanks. Yourself, Bridget?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the time. Maybe just so that we also understand Pixel Creators, the area of your preoccupation and focus.
All right. So Pixel Creators was established last year
Xolile, can I just ask
Yes.
to pause before we even begin so we can switch lines? We've just having some static on the line. We just want to switch lines for this conversation, hopefully get a nice crisper line. 0614104107 is our WhatsApp line. Seeing your voice notes on Present Fathers and on GBV in Society. And we'll definitely try and find some time to get to that. We're just trying to change Xolile to a different line. Coming up on the other side of 2 o'clock, it's health and wellness because it is Tuesday. So we're going to be looking at hearing loss and hearing health. And this, of course, is on the back of April being Hearing Health Awareness Month. We're going to have that conversation. And then we're also going to be answering the question how South Africa works. And we're looking at whistleblowing, a whistleblowing hub that's to launch on Freedom Day. So we'll find out more from the managing director at Courage Hub SA around what that all entails. Xolile, I'm told you are back with us. All right, so we were getting some context around Pixel Creators.
As I was saying, was established last year. Essentially, when Minister Mackenzie came in, he had a new vision in terms of how we address the different parts of the creative sector. And Pixel Creators is essentially responsible for animation, gaming, visual effects, virtual reality, and esports. So that's our focus area. And obviously we have a national mandate. And in terms of what we're doing with the current census, what we are trying to do is, gaming and animation is really sort of centered around Johannesburg, or should I say Gauteng and West Cape. Those are the two areas where it's predominantly practiced and there's more knowledge about it. Currently, the survey is going to, or the census is going to be happening we're currently in KZN, and from here we'll be moving to Eastern Cape. The reason we're starting with these two provinces is because despite the low level of animation and gaming activity in the provinces, they're actually quite high up when it comes to creative output. So in the country, Gauteng is obviously the highest, KZN second, Western Cape third, and Eastern Cape fourth. So what we're trying to do is to leverage this creative potential in these other two provinces and try to bring them up to par with what's happening in South Africa or in these other two provinces.
Yeah.
The other aspect that's important is that it's lesser known. Spaces of activity are lesser known. And it's ironic that although many young people are consuming animated content and games, they actually don't know or see the potential of careers for themselves. So that's the other thing we're trying to do, to show them how they fit into this landscape.
Yeah. We're just chasing time, so I want to try and get in as much as possible in this 2.5 minutes. Let's talk a little bit about the lack of reliable data as well around, gaming and animation. And what does that speak to? Does it speak to size, revenue, and other aspects of the sector that could help sort of narrow this gap you talk about?
So the biggest challenge we have is that South Africa has a big consumption trend when it comes to gaming content. So it's approximately around 7 billion. But when it comes to local content, because most of that is foreign consumption. So when it comes to local content, we're very, very low on that. I think it's about 150 million rand. So this process is to identify where the talent is, so that we can actually start ramping up our own local content production as far as games is concerned. Because primarily, if you see the trends that are happening, and I'll take education as a space, there's a gravitation towards e-learning, interactive learning, and that's where gaming is strong. But we're not in a position, as South Africa transitions to a digital curriculum, we're not in a position to actually take advantage of that as a job creation mechanism. So this will help us identify where the talent in the country is and how we unlock that talent to be able to take advantage of these opportunities that are on the horizon.
Does insufficient market data also discourage local and international investors?
Oh, yes, that's definitely a big stumbling block, because investors and financiers have no reference point. So this data will help to unlock some of that information which is currently missing.
All right. I guess maybe final question, sneaking it in there. To what extent does the poor data collection around the informal and emerging segments, for instance, if we're looking at indie developers or streamers, esports, for instance, to what extent do these efforts begin to formalize the sector and maybe even potentially unlock sustainable jobs?
So the way it's going to do that is essentially, if you think you're talking about indie developers, a lot of that are people who have worked in the industry and have sort of branched out to pursue their own projects. So in supporting the growth of the workforce, we're indirect also creating the platform for the development of indie studios and other creators who have essentially ideas that they would like to essentially create in gamified format.
We've just scratching the surface on this conversation, but that's all the time we have for it today. Thank you so much for the time, Chairperson of Pixel Creators. It's 2:00 on the dot. Maybe I need to go do some tongue and mouth exercises and some warm-ups in this break while Ondela gives us the news. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Bridget. On the top stories, Mandamela criticized for not following police procedures, and IEC allocated a budget of over 3 billion rand for SAFM News. I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The SAPS says the suspended Mpumalanga Police Commissioner Daphne Manamela should have approached the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry or Parliament's ad hoc committee. Manamela made serious allegations of corruption, political interference, as well as protection of criminal elements within the SAPS at a media briefing in Bombela on Sunday. National Police spokesperson Athlenda Mate says Manamela's allegations should be tested.
Those platforms, they have been established by the president so that those that have proof of wrongdoing, those that have proof of gross misconduct or any other evidence of wrongdoing in other law enforcement or in the country as a whole must come forward and provide that evidence. And they will be then given an opportunity to ventilate before the commission and provide their proof. So it is our wish that Lieutenant General Manamela would have utilized that platform.
The Chief Financial Officer of the Electoral Commission, Don Mbata, says they have been allocated a 3.1 billion rand budget for the 2026-27 financial year. The Commission's delegation is briefing Parliament's Committee on Home Affairs on this year's performance plan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I'll take us through the performance plan. We are looking at a budget allocation of 3.1 billion for the year 26-27. We do have 15 strategic targets. Again, in addition to that, we are looking to have 2 registration weekends and then the much anticipated 26-27 RGE.
The DA has announced a further 11 mayoral candidates who will be standing for election in municipalities across the Western Cape for the upcoming local government elections. This brings to 26 the number of mayoral candidates the party has been able to announce so far out of 30 municipalities. Newly elected DA Federal Chairperson Solim Simanga says the candidates have been subjected to a rigorous selection process, including written submissions and interviews to test their level of competency.
You would know that we're the only party that went out into the public space, made adverts, available to then say we want to then, get the people that want to serve, people who have talent, people who have the knowledge and the skills that can actually then contribute towards rescuing our municipalities, turning our municipalities around and making sure that they function as they're supposed to be functioning.
Business confidence in South Africa declined in March, slipping by 3.3 index points to 131.3. The drop followed a modest recovery in February when the index rose to 134.6 after recording a level of 131.4 at the start of 2026. Despite the mixed results in the first quarter, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Business Confidence Index averaged averaged higher than the same period last year. Saki economist Richard Downing says the ongoing geopolitical tensions, particularly the war in the Middle East, has added to the pressure by disrupting global markets and pushing oil prices higher.
But we are expecting actually the index to actually take some more hits as we go forward because of the continuous sort of uncertainties about the crude oil price and the sort of supply of fuel from especially the Middle East and the Hormuz sort of channel.
The Prime Minister of New Zealand says he will continue in the job after emerging from a 3-hour meeting held to discuss his future. Christopher Luxon is facing low ratings in the opinion polls. He called a confidence vote after dissatisfied MPs from within his own party leaked negative stories to the media. Luxon spoke to reporters shortly after the meeting ended.
To put that media speculation to rest, I moved a formal motion of confidence in my leadership. That motion was passed, confirming what I have been saying. I have the support of my caucus as their leader. Caucus has answered clearly and decisively. It has backed my leadership, and that matter is now closed, and I won't be commenting further on it.
Recapping the top story, the SAPS says the suspended Mpumalanga Police Commissioner Daphne Manamela should have approached the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry or Parliament's ad hoc committee. I'm Ondolambala for SFM News Headlines at 2:30.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation. Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all, under the theme Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. You are listening to The Full Circle. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is Malay coming through with Gimo Africa, bringing us to 10 past 2 o'clock. It is still the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM. I took the little bit of a break to go and do some vocal exercises. Hopefully the hopefully the tongue and the mouth are now completely warmed up, and the lips, I don't know. We take it for granted. You know, in different spaces, you got to do different things to prepare for yourself at work, right? And in these spaces, one has to actually warm up vocally and make sure that everything is alive. But we just take it for granted at times, and then you can tell when you have not done such things, when there's just no coordination at all. It is Tuesday after 2. We're having a health and wellness conversation now, and we're looking at hearing loss and hearing health. We're going to be in conversation with Erica Dutoy, who is a disability information coordinator with a special focus in hearing loss at the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities. And this conversation comes because April is Hearing Health Awareness Month, and April 29th will be International Noise Awareness Day, which carries the theme, Protect Your Hearing, Protect Your Health. How are you doing this afternoon, Erica?
Very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the time. Much appreciated. Funny enough, I don't know, because now maybe my brain is conscious of the fact that we're having a hearing conversation. But as you came almost sounding one level higher than where I'd left my headphones going into the break. Let's maybe firstly talk about why we observe Global Noise Awareness Day on the 29th of April.
So it is an international day that was instituted by the World Health Organization, and it's really about raising awareness of the dangers of loud noise and prolonged noise. And when it comes to prolonged noise, the effects are often not detected immediately, but it happens gradually and worsens over time and can lead to total deafness. And just as an indication of how prevalent hearing loss is in South Africa, we know, according to the World Health Report, that approximately 20% of South Africans have a hearing loss. That is approximately 12 million. And of those, 4.8 million have a disabling loss. So that means that the loss is greater than 25 decibels, which cuts out the speech band. In other words, those are people that struggle to hear ordinary speech.
Oh, wow. One does not think that it's quite significant, because 20% is a significant figure. So how loud is too loud?
So I mentioned 25 decibels. That is ordinary speech. Anything over 85 decibels can be dangerous. And that is approximately the sound of a handheld hairdryer, which is not to say if you dry your hair for 10 minutes with a hairdryer that you're going to have hearing loss. But if you're in that space for 8 hours, then you stand a chance of having some kind of loss. It gets higher once you get to about 140 decibels. That can cause immediate hearing loss. So a gunshot is at 140 decibels. An aircraft taking off is at 150, 160 decibels. And that's why you see people in shooting ranges, people at the airport always wear hearing protection. What what we are trying to raise awareness of is that while a sound may be moderate, like the I keep wanting to say the hearing aid, the hairdryer, exposure for longer than 8 hours can cause the loss. And for every 3 decibels up, that exposure time halves. So for 88 decibels, you can only be exposed for 4 hours. For 91, for 2 hours, before you stand the chance of having some kind of damage to your hearing. And so it happens a lot quicker than we think. And we also find that people don't really know what loud noise is. And we're all, I know, growing up, my mom always used to say, turn the radio down. And we often think our moms are just being silly, they don't understand. But they actually know that prolonged sound and actually the noise is going to damage your hearing. Possibly not when you're young, but certainly by the time you reach middle age, then it starts to manifest itself.
So it's a good thing that some of us, we say out in these social streets, we see nerves around noise. Once something is a little bit too loud, once it goes over that normal sort of decibel, it's like, ooh, you're giving me anxiety. Can we just switch it down a little bit? Because I also find, in these spaces, working in radio for 20 odd years now, and I said this at last conversation, we're talking about hearing loss, particularly for children. And I was saying the one thing that I've noted being in this space is coming into a studio and putting on, say, if you're putting on shared cams, shared headphones, the levels at which most of my colleagues, particularly male colleagues, keep the volume of headphones. You go, but you are going to lose your hearing at some point. Do we as South Africans actually understand this? And as you say, do we even know how loud is too loud when we enter an environment?
Well, that's why we're having this conversation. So that for me is an indication. If they have it that loud, then they need it that loud. And why would they need it that loud? Because there's already some kind of loss. They can't hear unless it is that loud. So that's, that's one of the signs that someone is possibly experiencing hearing loss, is things are just too loud.
Sure. As I cast my eye at my young technician here, who's a sound engineer, to see, because he's paying quite close attention to our conversation. So if that is one of the signs already, that if you need it that loud, it means perhaps your hearing has already been compromised. What are some of the other signs that one can know to be on the lookout for? So
that feeds into the next one. Your family tell you, or your colleagues tell you, that the TV is too loud, the radio is too loud. So you're already in that position. You can say to them, look, this is really too loud. It could also be a ringing or a buzzing in the ears. Sometimes you hear that sound is muffled. When we've been in very loud places and you move into a very quiet place, then you get that feeling that the sound is deafening. And that indicates damage. But the hair cells in your ear are able to recover, and so that muffled sound goes away after a while. But continued exposure means that at some point in the future, difficult to say when, those hair cells won't be able to recover. And so that muffled sound is what the beginning of hearing loss sounds like. You could also struggle with hearing in noisy places, noisy restaurants, noisy shopping malls, when, people start to say, pardon me, or would you please repeat that? Or even difficulty hearing when you can't see the person's face. And so we also know that all of us lip read to a certain extent. My mom always used to say she couldn't hear so well when she didn't have her glasses on. And I thought she was, being silly. But that's because we look, good communication, you look at someone and you look at their mouth. And so suddenly if you can't see their mouth anymore, then you realize how much you're relying on what you're seeing. And so another test is to hold your hand in front of your mouth when you speak to someone and see if they can still understand. And even in dimly lit areas, like restaurants, again, where the lighting isn't great and you can't really see the person's face and their expression, those are all those kinds of warning signs that possibly that person needs to, or yourself, needs to have a hearing evaluation.
In terms of the long-term consequences, I mean, I know we speak about disabling loss. The long-term consequences of untreated hearing loss, and maybe even doubling it with once you have a suspicion, once we've sort of done 2 or 3 of these self-assessments that you talk about, and we say perhaps there's a suspicion that our hearing is compromised. What becomes the steps to either try and halt it where it's at, or maybe try and improve it?
Yes. So firstly, the whole point of doing these kinds of conversations is that we're hoping to prevent it getting to that point. This is how you can protect your hearing. But if you suspect that you or someone close to you has already got some kind of damage, then the first step would be to have a hearing evaluation at a health professional like an audiologist. Often people say to me, I had my ears cleaned by the GP and they say my ears are fine. And that's your physiological ear. That may be fine, but that's not your hearing. They can't test your hearing. And so we advise people to go at least once to get a baseline and then follow up every second year or so to have your hearing tested. We do the same with the doctor. We go for a checkup. We go to the dentist for a checkup. Those of us that wear spectacles go to the optometrist every couple of years, but we don't test our hearing. And I think that's also partly because we think that it will happen suddenly. And it can happen suddenly, but a lot of it is very, very gradual, and you just don't realize it.
Yeah. I think we've caused concern for my young engineer, Umondli, here, because he's become so quiet and attentive, and he just sent me a bit of a crib note to ask you, as a sound engineer, they obviously, and in the context of talk radio, for those who don't sort of get the picture, if you're not dialed into our streaming, he's in the studio with me on the other side, and he's wearing headphones, cams, as we call them, and listening in real time to everything that's happening on the show. And I get the feeling his levels are probably a lot higher than my levels, because there's a lot of things he has to listen to simultaneously. Now, he doesn't just do this for my show. He does it for 2 shows back to back, which is essentially 6 hours straight with headphones. And his concerns is, because there's no real break there for him, he goes from one show to the next show. How does he begin to sort of firstly heal his ears, give them a bit of a break? But where does he go? Because he's a sound engineer. He depends on his ears. So where does he go to learn more about hearing loss? And maybe should he be visiting an audiologist, and how often?
I would say first stop is to visit an audiologist. And they can take it from there. That will give them a baseline. This is where your hearing's at. In terms of preventing damage, though, I'm not an audiologist. We approach this just purely from a human rights perspective and an awareness perspective. But to keep the sound at a reasonable listening level, we often talk about listening to music over cell phones. And when you turn the volume up on a cell phone, there is normally a warning that comes up to say it's now too loud. So the average kind of measurement is 60% of the volume for 60 minutes and then give yourself a break. So it might not be that in this kind of work where you're listening for 6 hours straight that you can do that, but you can certainly turn the volume down so that you can hear it, and you can still do your work, but it's not too loud. And where possible, give yourself a break. Maybe after an hour or two, give yourself 5-10 minute break if possible. And then the other option is noise cancelling earphones.
Yeah.
Because that cancels out all the background noise that often comes through, which means you're hearing only the sound that you need to hear, and you can put it softer because it's not competing against all the background.
Absolutely.
Sound.
I mean, as we're talking now, the aircon is also creating some ambient sounds. And what you mentioned there, Erica, when we had this conversation with an audiologist around hearing loss for children, she did advise, Mondli wasn't here that day, but I had another sound engineer who was just as curious. And she did advise that, in fact, we should go completely noise silent, free, for at least 30 minutes after we are done our jobs. So no radio, no ambient noise, just be noise silent. And just let your ears recover and recuperate for 30 minutes without any filtering of a sound or a noise at all. 3 steps, perhaps, for healthy hearing. And you've spoken a lot about just being conscious about the levels at which we engage sound, and perhaps other things that we can be considered about in our day-to-day.
I think number one is to limit that exposure to loud noise. Turn down the volumes, educate your children on the dangers of loud noise, wear hearing protection if you can't control the noise levels, and then have your hearing screened regularly. A complete evaluation with an audiologist, preferably one that has a knowledge of hearing loss and rehabilitation post-hearing loss. But those, I think, are the 3 main steps. If you cannot control the noise and you don't have hearing protection, then remove yourself from the noise. I've already, in my younger days, been to parties that are really, really loud, and you just, at some point, you just can't deal with the loud noise and go outside until your ears have recovered.
Yeah.
Because they must have that kind of break. We're sitting with a lot of rock stars, musicians who have severe hearing loss issues. People like Sting, people like Paul Simon, that have had a lifetime of loud noise. It's music, but essentially it's noise to the ears, without proper protection, and they're dealing with the aftermath of that.
Absolutely. I want to just jump to WhatsApp quickly. I think one of our listeners had some advice or some thoughts for you, particularly, Monli, on hearing loss.
Hi, Bridget and your team. Nice show. As an occupational medicine practitioner, that's where what we call medical surveillance comes in for your young engineer there. He should get his hearing tested yearly. And not only his hearing, his whole health, to see whether he is fit to work as an engineer. If there are deviations there in his hearing, interventions can be done timeously. Anonymous here.
All right, some good advice. Someone will be expecting you to go to an audiologist and get your hearing tested and then come back with a full report on the show. But as a parting shot as well in our last minute, Erica, in South Africa, like in many other developing countries, there's a limited number of hearing health professionals, including audiologists and audiological resources that are available.
There are. Globally, I think and I'm subject to correction. I think it used to be approximately 10 or 15% of people who need some kind of assistive device actually get them. But I do know that, there are obviously quite a lot of hearing health practitioners in the private sector, but there are those in the public sector as well. And the Department of Health does have assistive devices that they are able to provide, but again, it is probably limited, and I think it depends on which province people are in as to how well resourced they are, as to whether they get them or not. But it is not all doom and gloom. That's why we do this, is to say hearing loss caused by exposure to loud noise can be prevented, but you have to start early.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there for this afternoon. We appreciate your time and your advice. That was Erica Dutoy, Disability Information Coordinator, with a special focus, of course, on hearing loss at the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities. It's 2:30. Ondalambana is standing by with the headline news, and that will lead us into our kids programming for today by way of Kids Corner.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the National Prosecuting Authority in Gauteng says it has decided not to proceed with the case against a 58-year-old man who was arrested in connection with a deadly road rage shooting in Marintia in Johannesburg. The SAPS says the suspended Mpumalanga Police Commissioner Daphne Manamela should have approached the Amadlanga Commission of Inquiry or Parliament's ad hoc committee and the Western Cape Tourism Department, as international tourists to the mother city spent nearly 26 billion rand last year. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education. And if you miss any of our programs, you can catch up anytime on the SABC Plus app or on the SABC Plus website, www.sabcplus.com. Brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hello, friends, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to another exciting episode of Kids Corner. Today we're talking about something many of you know well. Your school bag. Is your school bag sometimes too heavy? What do you usually carry in your school bag every day? Do you think carrying a very heavy bag can be a problem for your body? Is there anything you can do to make your school bag lighter? How should you carry your school bag properly to protect your bag? Alright friends, let's hear from some of our friends while you share your answers with the people next to you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Samgel Siyo Mukhalwane and I'm 12 years old from Shuluzan, Maisela Primary School. Yes, and it is heavy every day. I feel anxious and tired. My books, textbook, and my lunchbox. It can be a problem by hitting my shoulder and my back, and it can affect my spine. I can leave other books at home, or school must build shelves so that we can put our books there. I must not carry many books. I can also carry it by hand to protect my bag. Thank you.
Greetings, listeners. My full name is Zintle Mahlangu. I'm 12 years old from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, it is heavy some days, not always. I feel exhausted. I usually carry classwork books, textbooks, pencil case, and sanitizer and hand lotion. I can divide my books by using 2 bags, the other one for textbooks and the other one for classwork books. I can carry my school bag by a hand to protect my bag. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Nalin Matib. I am 12 years old from Shuluzan Maisela Primary School. Yes, my school bag is sometimes too heavy because I carry a lot of books and we do so many subjects. My mother doesn't want me to leave any book at home because when it's English period, then the teacher says we must take out our textbooks. Then she found out that I don't have it. I will be in trouble. It feels like I am carrying a huge box of apples.
and I sometimes feel like I can just throw my school bag away, and that even makes me more tired. I carry my school books and some old books for drawing and for also writing notes. I think it can make my bag more painful because when I carry a lot of heavy things, my bag is painful. And especially mathematics textbook, it makes my school bag more heavy. I would copy the timetable at the class, then I left a book for the subject that is not going to be in. I should use the caddy bag. Thank you.
Greetings to everyone. My full name is Bonam Shala. I'm from Susan Maisela Primary School in grade 7A. Yes, my school bag is sometimes too heavy because I carry a lot of heavy books, which are my classwork books and textbooks. When I try to leave some of my books, my mind says no. I think about what if we are going to use some of those books and I don't have them. It feels like I am carrying a big stone on my back. I usually get tired fast when the weather is very hot, and I don't like it when it is very hot because it feels like I'm carrying a person, and I usually ask myself, when am I going to arrive at home? I usually carry my classwork books and textbooks for every subject, and my mom doesn't want me to even make a mistake of leaving books at home. When I can leave a book at home by mistake, my mom makes sure she comes to school and give it to me. I think carrying a heavy bag can be a problem because it causes a lot of pain, especially when it is hot. I can ask each teacher which books are we going to use. If there are those books that I am not going to use, I will leave them at home. I will use the caddy bag. Thank you.
Greetings to the listeners out there. My full name is Lisedi Ngele and I'm from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, it is. It feels like I have piled up a bunch of rocks instead of books. I usually carry my books and my pencil case. It can be a problem because your bag might be in big trouble from the weight of your bag. And since some of us are not even strong enough, it might put you in a wheelchair for the rest of your life only if the doctors can do nothing. I take out some books to lighten up my school bag, like we usually do, because there is no way around to carry it. We just have to patient up the pain besides this. Books, we don't carry them for nothing. We also read them to gain something from them. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Mpole Bepe from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, it is because of too many books. Too many books hurt our bag because there are too many things inside our bags. Worse, because I even have an extra bag. I carry both of them. I must because of the other bag has my school supplies. I feel pain. Worse for me because of my extra bag. Every time I carry it, I sometimes even ask myself, why all the book, including the textbooks? Others come with their classworks but not textbooks. They leave them at their homes. I wish I could do that, but I can't. What I actually carry in my bag is all my classwork books, including my textbooks, my water bottle in case I get thirsty, my mathematical sets, and my calculator. In my extra bag, my wax crayons, my reading club books, and my pencil case. It is very uncomfortable because of every time I carry it, my body shakes, especially my back. My shoulders hurt and my legs are sore every time I do this because it hurts and I need to continue. And most of all, that's the hurtful part. I'll stop taking all the textbooks and bring the time label. I should have done this a long time ago, but I shouldn't start coming with small things.
I would carry from the back part of the front because this is where the weight is. Then my other bag with my hands as usually from the back and the front. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. It's always great to hear from you. And to our friends listening, I hope you shared your answers with the people next to you. A school bag is something you carry every day, and sometimes it can feel too heavy and uncomfortable. When a bag is very heavy, it can make your shoulders sore, your back tired, and even make it harder to walk properly. Some children may feel pain in their neck, shoulders, or back when carrying a heavy bag for a long time. Most school bags carry important things like books, exercise books, stationery, a lunchbox, and a water bottle. Sometimes extra items that are not needed for the day can make the bag even heavier without you realizing it. Carrying a very heavy bag can be a problem for your body because it can strain your muscles, affect your posture, and even lead to back pains over time. When the weight is not balanced properly, it can cause you to lean forward on one side, which is not healthy for your growing body. There are simple ways to make your school bag lighter. You can pack only the books you need for the day, clean out your bag regularly, and avoid carrying unnecessary items. Using a timetable can help you know exactly what to bring each day so your bag stays organized and lighter. Carrying your bag the right way is also very important. Always use both shoulder straps instead of hanging the bag on one shoulder. Adjust the straps so that the bag sits comfortably on your back, not too low. Keeping the heavier items closer to your bag inside the bag also helps with balance and support. Taking care of your pack and carry your school bag helps protect your body, keeps you comfortable, and allows you to focus better at school. Small habits like this can make a big difference in your health and well-being. That's it for today, friends. See you next time!
If you miss any of our programs, you can catch up anytime on the SABC Plus app or on the SABC Plus website, www.sabcplus.com. Brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Bridget Masinga, weekdays on The Full Circle.
All right, as we begin to wind down on the show, we thought we'd have a conversation around how South Africa works. We know we've started the series as of last week, just interrogating different aspects of the country and different issues that speak to governance, that speaks to municipality, that speaks to leadership, and the very many themes that fall underneath all of that. We're going to be catching up with Brandon Greeley now, who's the managing director at Courage Hub SA, on Freedom Day, Monday, 27th April. It marks 32 years of democracy's Courage Hub SA, launching South Africa's first ethics and storytelling center. Now, this is a new platform to fight corruption and to support whistleblowers, as well as inspire some form of ethical leadership in Johannesburg. And so we thought we would catch up with Courage Hub SA to tell us more about what will be South Africa's first ethics and storytelling center. How are you doing this afternoon, Brendan?
Oh, Bridget, I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
really is a pleasure to be here.
We appreciate it indeed. Let's look at the mission and perhaps the objective of Courage Hub SA.
Yes.
How will it work and how does it work?
Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background of how it came about. I had a podcast a couple of years ago with the Ethics Institute called Talking Ethics, and Cynthia Stimple, the SAA whistleblower who wrote the novel, the book, Hijackers on Board, about her experience at SAA as a whistleblower. And we had her on board on the podcast. And one of the questions we asked her was, Cynthia, how do we stop the scourge of fraud and corruption in South Africa's entities, be it business, be it what institutions, whatever? And she said, the youth. And I spent a year a bit looking for a partner to go into, and we started a podcast on schools, and I teamed up with Nico Siakamela, who's had 20 years experience in schools, and we decided to get Cynthia Stimple back to let her know that we listened to what she said last time, and we are now going into developing the youth and taking workshops into schools and things like that. And while we were interviewing her, she started talking about what she would like to do for whistleblowers in terms of storytelling, in terms of developing their stories, in terms of listening to their stories. And we started, and it was basically a brainstorm around this concept. And a few weeks later, I phoned Brian Green here at 44 Stanley, and I told Brian what we were doing, and he said, I've got the spot for you. And so we moved in here on the 1st of January, and we've been going for three months, and as you said, 3 and a bit months, and as you said in your introduction, we will be launching on the 27th with an exhibition of, just to start off with, it's going to be an exhibition of 14 deceased whistleblowers, their stories on canvas we're going to have on our walls, and then we've got these easels given to us by Kathy Berman of Impact for Good. And we're going to have live whistleblowers, 12 live whistleblowers to start the story off. So, and that's what we're doing on the 27th. But to get back to what we're about as well, if I may just carry on, Bridget, is we've got this podcast where we're interviewing whistleblowers. So we've already interviewed Deshni Govender. She was a whistleblower in the banking sector. She had a story about money disappearing out of her account, and we interviewed her, and that'll be coming out soon. And then we've also interviewed Martha Ngoy and Tiro Hulelo, who are the Prasol whistleblowers, and are at present embroiled in quite legal battle to get their jobs back. But this has been ongoing for 7 years. So we've interviewed them, and I must just say that the fascinating thing about interviewing someone on a podcast, with all due respect to journalists, and they only have, say, a few minutes, like I've got with you, a few minutes, and then we've got to move on, or if it's a print journalist, it's going to be 300 words, and then we move on. They just wanted to get everything off their chest, because we spoke for over an hour, and the story it can develop and develop and develop, and that's what we're wanting to do, is to develop their stories, maybe even to become public speakers, going out into corporates and being keynote speakers on their experience of whistleblowing.
Let's also touch on, you mentioned some whistleblowers here who really shared across a variety of industries, but why it matters so much for spaces like the Hub to exist. And also why it matters so much. We saw the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mameloko Kubai, recently releasing the Protected Disclosures Bill for public comment. Why these pieces of proposed legislation also matter. We've had Abompo Mafole, 40-year-old forensic chief auditor of the city of Ekurhuleni, murdered in 2025. We've had Babita Deokaran murdered as well for her efforts in uncovering and exposing corruption. We've had Simnikiwe Mapini, finance adjudicator for the city of Ekurhuleni, killed in 2023. Ethel Williams, of course, for exposing corruption. And the lists go on and on. Why does it matter so?
It matters because there's an attitude to whistleblowing. Almost all, I've just come out of a workshop last week, put on by Democracy Works Foundation, Whistleblower House, and the European Union, where whistleblowers were up there telling their stories. And Bridget, you know that every single story starts with, I was thought I was doing good for the company. Mm-hmm. It's people who are not dishonest and they see something wrong. Their immediate reaction isn't, oh, I'm going to blow the whistle. It's, hey, there's something wrong here. I should go and share it with the powers that be. Mm. And of course, that becomes a nightmare. An absolute nightmare where people start, and your colleagues, I mean, Cynthia Stimple, my partner, her colleagues, she talks about her colleagues, going to her colleagues and saying, listen, this was 2016, it was when it started at SAA. There's a problem here. Are you guys going to join me? And everyone just turns their back. So the colleagues, and it's fear. We can understand that it's human nature. It's fear. But it's the people who stand up and they actually have their lives destroyed. And that's what we want to change. The perception of Mpimpi. There was a young man next to me who's doing a PhD in youth ethics. And the way the young look up to these people with these fancy cars and these ill-gotten gains. Yeah, sure, people are allowed to have fancy cars if they've got them correctly. But these people that get fancy cars and they look up to them, and he said that's got to change. So that's the other side.
Yeah.
Our schools workshop side, but we'll get to that.
Brendan, I just need to pause you. I need to pause you for a second. Apologies. Sorry. We've got a threatening commercial break here. Let's just take this break and then we'll come back on the other side.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
What do you make of their recommendations?
General Rode was acting on instruction. He makes a submission to IPED. I was informed of what had transpired by the president, and I was instructed by the president. So if IPED is going to find General Rode as an individual who is guilty of some crimes, it must then by extension go to the individual who gave a wrong directive.
ATM, me is the ATM spokesperson, Zaman Choma.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You are listening to The Full Circle.
At the tail end of our conversation with Brendan Greeley, Managing Director at Courage Hub SA, and they're launching South Africa's first ethics and storytelling centre. And this is a new platform that's set to fight corruption and support whistleblowers, as well as inspire ethical leadership in Johannesburg. Just in our final moments, Brendan, and I think it speaks to the inspiration of ethical leadership, get them whilst they're young. Is what I'm also picking up from our conversation, particularly when it comes to your youth engagements and fostering a culture, building a culture that becomes a tool to curb corruption and criminality.
100%. Briefly, we go into schools. We've already tested it at one school, and I was given 40 minutes, and it was role plays like finding a wallet in the playground, or taking someone's sandwich, or mocking someone for having clothes that didn't fit properly. And we had two actors do a 2-minute role play. I was given 40 minutes. After an hour 20, I had to call an end to it. These youngsters want to talk about this. They can see it affecting. They're watching the Matlanga Commission. They're listening to their parents. They're hearing things. They want to get involved. And I've been told by psychologists and people like that I've got to go young, because I was targeting high school. They've said I've got to come into the junior schools. We've got to start in junior schools to get this out there.
Just by way as a final thought to our conversation, Resources, how do we perhaps support whistleblowers? What have come out from your various conversations?
Well, what we're going to do, we're setting up a funding system on our website to train whistleblowers, and we want to set up a social entrepreneurship certification in Courage Hub SA, where people can come and qualify us because they can't get work. Whistleblower, they just cannot. It's bizarre. Like Cynthia, she was the Chief Financial Officer of SAA. She can't get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's actually to create jobs and create this. And I know we've got to come to an end, Bridget, but I'd just like to say we're very, very fortunate in our launch on the 27th. We've got Wayne Divinage, CEO of ARTA, who's going to be speaking at our launch, and Martha Ngoy, as I said earlier, the PRASA whistleblower.
I do wish we had more time, but we have to leave it there for today. That was Brendan Greeley, MD at Courage Hub SA, and you can find them on couragehubsa.org. Now, as we wrap up the show today, it's day 3 of the cross-examination of suspended Tshwane Chief Financial Officer Gareth Mnisi in relation to the alleged tender rigging at the Tshwane municipality as well as the Metro Police Department. Today, Mnisi's relationship with Sergeant Faninkosi continued to be spotlighted by evidence leader advocate Matthew Chuckleson SC, and probing whether or not Mnisi on the brotherly relationship between the two, and with Chuckleson actually looking to get to the crux of whether or not Sergeant Nkosi required Mnisi to rig tenders in favor of Nkosi's preferred companies. We want to play you just a voice clip reflecting on some of the key moments from today's exchange.
11th of January, 6:17 a.m. message time, 8:17 a.m. actual time. You message him, off on an urgent meeting in Durban, will be back later today, just an in and out. Morning, my brother, go well, he responds. You say, cross your fingers, Mfowethu, going for a massive business deal that side. Do you recall what the business deal was?
Yes, it's a personal matter that I had to go to.
Yes, well, can you tell me what it involved?
I'm going to object to my learned friend's line of questioning. The meeting is private and confidential, and my learned friend's case is that it's relevant to the work of the Commission. I would respectfully request that he motivates why this is relevant to the work of the Commission. Thank you, Chairperson.
It's relevant to the work of Commission because Sergeant Nkosi's answer is, my man, I'm crossing my fingers. I know when you grow, I will grow too. I stand by the question, Chair.
I respectfully stand by the submissions that I made in this regard. To disclose here his private, financial or business affairs with respect is not part of the work of the Commission.
Mr. Chuckleson, without more, my inclination is to disallow the question.
Chair, I won't persist then. My next question then is, did Sergeant Nkosi know that you were talking about a private business deal?
Of course. Yes, SC, he did know.
And his response is, I know when you grow, I will grow too.
He's happy for me. If he gets a promotion at work, I'm happy for him. It's friends being happy for each other when there's growth in their respective lives.
I see.
No, Mr. Minister, that's not what that message is. You can read it and consider it again. That response that says, when you grow, I will grow too. It's clear that he's saying your growth will lead to his own growth. That's what that message says. So do reconsider your answer.
No, Commissioner, respectfully, I don't reconsider my answer. I read this message. I understood this message to mean, I'm happy for you, my friend, in the same way I would say to him as well. It's a form of expression. We had a deep friendship with Sergeant Nkosi. So I respectfully stick to the answer that I've given. I read this message, I understood it, that he's happy for me.
He's not just happy for you. He says, your growth will lead to his own growth. That you must accept. No, I am asking the witness a question, and the witness can answer. And if you want to re-examine, you can do that. But I will not allow you to interfere with my question. And if the witness doesn't want to answer, that's it. That's his answer. But I must insist the witness must answer my question. Mr. Mnisi, answer my question.
Commissioner, I respectfully disagree with you. I understood this message to be a friend, happy for a friend. He even says, Pagamam for you to that for me is a guy who's happy for me. That's how I understood the message at the time. That's how I still understand it now. And that's the answer that I'm providing to you as the commissioner.
Thank you for your answer.
I mean, you picked up there on the irritation by the commissioners around Advocate Van den Heerwe, her constant interjections and objections, both yesterday and today, in fact, regarding and speaking to the line of questioning from Advocate Chakelson and the commissioners when it pertained to her client. So that's where we'll leave it for today. Ashraf is going to bring you your next update at 5:45 on the National Pulse. But the conversation continues. Of course, you can always reach us on WhatsApp and on social media at SAFM Radio and at Bridget Masinga. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
Thank you, Bridget and the team. On the top stories, SIU freezes assets linked to Eskom corruption and NPA drops case of Emmarentia road rage. For SFM News, I'm Onda Lambana and a very good afternoon. The Special Investigating Unit has frozen 17 immovable properties worth 76.5 million and 7 luxury cars in suspected Eskom-related corruption. We'll have details in the next bulletin. The National Prosecuting Authority in Gauteng says it has decided not to proceed with the case against a 58-year-old man who was arrested in connection with a deadly road rage shooting in Emmarentia, Johannesburg. The man was expected to appear in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court today to face charges of murder and attempted murder. The man was involved in a physical altercation on Sunday with another driver, which escalated into a fatal shooting. The 48-year-old man that was killed during the incident is believed to be a Pakistani national, and his body is expected to be repatriated to his home country for a burial. The NPA's Mahaboge Mutlatlule explains.
After a careful consideration of the evidence of the alleged road rage incident which occurred in Emmarentia, the NPA has decided not to proceed with the matter pending further investigations.
Suspended City of Tshwane CFO Gareth Mnisi has been questioned about a text message he received from Sergeant Fani Nkosi, in which Nkosi wrote, "When you grow, I will grow." The exchange took place in November last year while Mnisi was travelling to Durban, KwaZulu-Natal for an urgent meeting. When asked about what Nkosi meant by that statement, Mnisi told the Commission that Nkosi was simply expressing happiness for him. During the proceedings, Mnisi's counsel, Advocate Annelyn van der Heever, attempted to interject while Commissioner Sesi Baloyi was questioning him about the meaning of the text message. However, Baloyi instructed her to raise any issues during re-examination.
If I'm asking the witness a question and the witness can answer, and if you want to re-examine, you can do that. But I will not allow you to interfere with my question. And if the witness doesn't want to answer, that's it. That's his answer. But I must insist the witness must answer my question. Mr. Mnisi, answer my question.
The SAPS says the suspended Mpumalanga Police Commissioner Daphne Manamela should have approached the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry or Parliament's ad hoc committee. Manamela made serious allegations of corruption, political interference, as well as protection of criminal elements within the SAPS at a media briefing in Mbombela on Sunday. National Police spokesperson Athlenda Mata says Manamela's allegations should be tested.
Those platforms, they have been established by the president so